All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, December, what is it, the 18th already? Gosh, things are flying by here. Uh,
Imagine.
right? How you doing, Dwayne?
Good, bud.
Good. Welcome to another Watercooler Wednesday, everybody. And as usual, bringing you some new case studies and things like that so you can explore more about the note investing business and, really the variety of opportunities that are within it. I don't think most people understand that when they're first exposed to this business, they consider it a niche. Now, the perception of that is changing over time, especially when it's starting to reach high profile people such as Kiyosaki and such as recent as several years ago. But much like real estate, that has a lot of different avenues you can go down. You can do wholesaling, you can do retailing, the fix and flipping, Airbnb these days, which nobody had ever heard of, before. Lease options, land, commercial. I mean, you could just break it down into multiple categories. It really applies the same way to the note business. And one of the things that Dwayne and I have to do when we're talking with people about this business is say, okay, we've got to expose you and educate you to the business in the entirety, but we got to reel you back in and say, let's get a short-term focus here so you can start to build upon that. Otherwise, you can spin your wheels, right? You can just say, I'm going to do this part of note business this week. I'm going to do a direct mail campaign next week. I'm going to do a search for non-performing notes. The week after that, I'm doing performing, and then I'm going to start focusing on partials. Then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do that. And the next thing you know, you haven't done anything. So the main goal should be let's make money. It's like which way of all these avenues is the best way for you, the right way for you to be able to do that. And we've practiced that now for I don't know how many years, and that's absolutely the most effective way to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, we haven't spoken. So I had several calls yesterday with new clients, and our conversation was just that, as always. I give them a 50,000 foot view of the business and really drill down on what their pain point is and what they're looking for. And everybody's across the board of what they want to get out of it. But at the end of the day, they always say they want their time back and they're looking to make money and get out of their 9 to 5 and or add to their 9 to 5 income. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I obviously we talk about you and what you provide for them, and I said, Kevin really does a great job at, I give him the information about you, pass that on, but everybody's situation's different, and he breaks it down to a granular level of what's going to work best for you. And so it could be deal flow for someone that's trying to create fee income. It could be buying performing or non-performing. But even though there's so many different facets of notes, you really need to drill down on having a view plan of what direction you want to go. And so they understand, it clicks with them. So
Yeah.
I don't have to do all these different things. No, you need to know them, but you need to figure out a game plan of what's going to work best for you so you can get what you're looking for.
Right. And I'm going to focus on a deal today from a gentleman. His name is Alvin. And Alvin's a great case study of what we just talked about and what we're going to be talking about here shortly. He started with me about 2 years ago, brand new to the note industry, hadn't done any notes before, had done no, hadn't done any real estate really either, now that I think of it. And so he came to this green, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, everybody, because he did also that means he didn't come with any baggage. He didn't come in with any preconceived notions of what should be. Didn't come in thinking he knew a lot more than he actually did. And I've seen that happen before. We've seen very experienced real estate investors come into this business who were thinking going to be some superstars, and then they start to realize there are some transferable skills, but you still have to go through and learn this part of the business. Otherwise, it's going to come back and bite you. So sometimes coming in very green, if you will, right, is not a bad thing. So he was very receptive to coaching, to mentoring. He's basically tell me what to do. I will follow through on that. Let's review what I did. Let's move forward, and just that progress throughout the whole thing. So we started with him because he was brand new. Started with very simple turnkey notes. Turnkey notes, by my definition, is it's got at least 2 years of payment history. There's at least 30% equity in the note. and the payment history has to be solid. And when you see notes like that, and the note, I think the first note I got him in, if memory serves, I think there's maybe 6 years of seasoning. There was more than 50% equity, so it was much greater than what the minimums are, and it was just a really simple deal. Well, that one led to another one. That one led to another one, and before you know it, in his first year, he had 12 to 14 notes done. And into his second year, he continued on that pattern. Of course, he needed me less and less. Now it became a part where he just booked appointments with me just to review. He goes, Kevin, I've already negotiated this. Here's what I have. I think it's a good deal, but I just want to get in front of you to make sure I haven't missed anything, right? So we'd review it, and he was closing them. After about 20 notes, he decided, you know what? I think I'm ready to look at some non-performing notes. I think I'm ready to go a little bit of a different direction. And that's, again, what can happen. You start somewhere and you start to expand. Now, in his case, it was into his second year. I'm not saying it has to be into your second year. It's really an individual thing. But for him, the timing was right. He was just ready to do that and take on the addition to the note investing of a non-performing asset. And when I say additions, there are additions. I mean, you're buying a broken product. So you have to have the skill set, the understanding, the time, the patience, and the money to cure that. And there can be multiple cures. So in his first non-performing note, he really wanted to take at least the borrower out of the equation as much as he could. So in other words, he wasn't looking for a workout. A workout's when you buy a non-performing loan that shows all of the signs that the person wants to stay and pay. They just ran into a rough patch. You're going to negotiate with them. You're going to get the cash flow started again, that sort of thing, and that's the goal. In his case, he would really rather end up with the real estate. Okay, so you're looking for a different deal on that. So again, a different avenue. So can you buy real estate by way of notes? Yes, you can. That's just another way to go. Can you buy a non-performing note, renovate that note by working with the borrower to get it reperforming again and add value? Yes, you can. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. So he found a deal that the property showed every sign of being vacant. Sign on the door, that sort of thing. No activity. You never know 100%, but there's reasonable educated guesses and signs that it's unoccupied. Also, the property taxes were way behind. There was just no activity on this deal. So chances are it's a property that the owner has simply abandoned and moved on with their life, but the debt is still sitting there, right? So first of all, why haven't real estate investors purchase this property and that sort of thing? Because it's not listed for sale. It's not for sale anywhere. So they're waiting until it goes to a foreclosure. They're waiting, real estate investors are waiting to see that foreclosure list. They're waiting to see it at the courthouse steps. They're looking for a for sale sign, going up. None of that's going to happen. Alvin's buying this on a non-performing note basis. So he's getting it before all of these other deals. So I'm going to switch to a share screen here. And by the way, if you want to see all the slides and you want to see the video instead of just the audio, you can do that after the fact on YouTube as well, because I'll post it on YouTube. I also repost the audio on my podcast. And please check out the podcast, Real Estate Without Renters, and subscribe. That is always nice when we see subscriptions going up. So here's the actual deal. And Dwayne, I don't remember if you remember this deal or not. It's something that we've been able to see because Alvin's been with me from start to finish on this thing. And so I don't know how familiar you are with.
Yes, I've seen it. Yep.
Okay. So not a bad property. It's in Detroit, a good area of Detroit. Detroit's going through a lot of regrowth in certain areas. The house looks pretty solid from the outside, upon observation. But again, we checked and called the utility. The power had been turned off. That was another sign that it's empty. So there's little ways that you can find these things out. So what we found was that the property as is, assuming it's in decent condition inside, is worth about 65,000 bucks. With some money put into it, could be worth as much as 85 in that area. So that's where we were dealing with values. Very similar to what a real estate investor does, right? They look for what can I buy it for as is, what's it going to cost me to renovate it, and then how much value have I added where I can resell it and cash in my profit. Because remember, the goal in this non-performing note was not to do a workout. The goal was to end up with the property. Okay, so we have to think a little bit more of a real estate investor in this case, and think through the outs. Are you going to renovate it yourself? Are you going to renovate it to rent? Are you going to renovate it to sell? Are you going to sell with seller financing, create paper on it? How are we, what are we going to do? So we ran through all the various options because the numbers look good. Unpaid balance was 30 grand. The payoff was 37,000. So this loan had accrued an additional $7,140 over the unpaid balance. The last payment was made in 2021, but that was paying for a payment that was past due in January 2020. Now, those numbers might look funny to you because this deal he purchased in 2023. So he's only a couple of years behind. But Dwayne, do you remember how far behind people were, back in the last crash? When we were buying notes in 2010, 11.
Crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean, 5, 6, 7 years was not uncommon, everybody. I mean, there were people who were just riding it out going, banks aren't foreclosing and we're just going to stay here and not answer anybody for 5, 6 years and just ride it out.
And what we had, what a lot of these homeowners were doing is they knew they were in a foreclosure situation. They would go lease that or rent that property out. So they're collecting all the rents, the income coming in and keeping that pocket, that money for themselves. And, one day the sheriff's knocking at the door telling you, you got to move. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm paying my rent. I'm paying my mortgage on this thing, or which I think I am. When they have no idea that it's the home was in foreclosure. So we knew it, as educators, but when you try and educate people that they're like, no way that can happen.
Yeah, it totally happened.
It's real. It was definitely real.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times, to your point, they didn't have real leases, and it was either a very simple month to month, or it was just a verbal agreement on the rent. And that way the tenants could get kicked out. If there was a formal rent in place, then they've got some rights. In fact, that's one of the things we thought about on this one. We didn't quite know, again, definitively if this was occupied or not. There were some indicators that possibly it was tenant occupied. We just didn't know. And you might feel, well, gee, there's a lot of stuff you guys don't know. Why would you buy something like this? Look, if you've ever purchased real estate itself, forget about notes for a moment. If you've ever purchased real estate itself at a foreclosure auction, guess what? You don't know the status either.
Right.
If you do, it's because you illegally entered that property. And I'm telling you that happens all the time, but you don't know what it looks like inside. You don't know if somebody's in there legally or illegally. When you buy it at the foreclosure auctions, you don't. And the only reason you would is if you went onto that property, which technically means you were breaking the law because you were trespassing, especially if you entered that property. So you don't know that. And this is why you get rewarded greater. This is why you have to know what your risks are going into this and know what your exit strategies are, because problem solvers do make a lot of money in this business, but they're willing to take on more risk. Now, remember, Alvin, when he first started, was more risk averse. He got into, what did I say? Turnkey notes, nice, easy notes that provided passive monthly cash flow on a regular basis, right? With a proven track record, with plenty of upside because there's plenty of equity, property value backing his investment. Over time, he said, hey, you know what? I'm okay right now. I've got 20 notes, I've got good income coming in from those. I'm ready to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm ready to step up and take a little bit more risk because I'm also expecting what? A greater reward on this. Okay, so that's the balance. Those are the things that you think through on this thing. Now, that's what the numbers were on the basic numbers on the surface here. And of course, we're going to pay this at a deeper discount, by the way. So what kind of security agreement was in place? That becomes important as well. If it's a mortgage, well, mortgages are a judicial foreclosure, but judicial foreclosures can depend upon where you live, or where the property, I should say, is located. Here in Florida, where I live, our judicial foreclosure takes at least 18 months. In New York, it's about 4 years. In New Jersey, it's 2+ years. So they do take a little bit longer. Certainly, that weighs into your equation as an investor. If this property was in Georgia, Georgia's non-judicial and they take about 90 days. Okay, Missouri takes about 90 days. So this is where, some knowledge basically of what foreclosure costs in various states, as well as it costs, by the way, in time and money, is important to know. Now, this one was interesting to us too, because this was under what's called a contract for deed. Okay. Now, if you don't know what a contract for deed is, you can look that up. I'll give you a short synopsis on this one, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with this. A contract for deed, it's a very descriptive title. You're selling a property to somebody. Okay, so I'm selling a property to Dwayne, let's say, and Dwayne is going to be the borrower on this deal. The deal is, okay, Dwayne, we're entering this contract, and the contract says, once you pay me in full, then I will give you the deed. So he's under a contract to get the deed. Okay, so we call it a contract for deed. Well, it's a contract for getting the deed. How's he going to get the deed? To pay me off the loan, right? Now, the loan that I'm creating for him is seller finance, so he's going to make monthly payments to me. That's how it works. But in the meantime, I'm going to stay as the seller of the property and also the person doing the financing. I'm going to stay on the legal title to the property. That's a big difference. Okay? If I'm on the legal property, remember, possession is 9/10 of the law. For some reason, everybody's heard that before. Possession is 9/10 of the law. And that's right. So if in this scenario, Dwayne stops making payments, I enforce the contract, because certainly in that contract, I have a stipulation in there that says, if you breach this contract, you have X number of days, let's say 30 days to cure it. If you don't cure it, you're in breach of contract, contract for deed is over. I don't have to foreclose. Why? Because I'm already on the deed. I'm already on the title to the property. So that avoidance of foreclosure makes the property possession that much quicker. So we knew that, of course, going in. We also knew that this property was in Michigan, and Michigan does have a contract for deed law. Not all states do. You can do a contract for deed in every state, but not all states have a specific law that addresses it. So in Michigan, there's a much higher probability that if the borrower fights this, then the Michigan is going to uphold the contract for deed, meaning we're still going to be able to avoid foreclosure. Okay, so I hope that was clear for everybody. So we knew all of this information. We're armed with all of this before he even puts a dime out. Okay, all of our due diligence is done. Got a BPO back of what the as-is value is, that sort of thing. We knew the title was good on the property. So we are armed not only with the information about the property, but we've already figured out 5 different exit strategies. And you know what? He's making money on any of them. Doesn't matter which one, because some things are in our control, some things may not be in our control, right? So you have to prepare for all of those scenarios there. Whoops, put that back up there. So unpaid balance is 13 grand, payoff is 37, but this is a non-performing note for several years. We buy those at deeper discounts. So we paid $16,500 for this note, backed by a property that's worth 65 as is, potentially 85 with some money into the property. Now it's just a matter of going through the process to get the title of the property. Now, if there's a tenant in there, if there's a written lease, he'll honor that lease. Why not? We'll get the assignment of lease payments and he'll collect monthly rent payments on that. We looked up the monthly rent in the area, which is about $1,400 a month. Yeah, He'll honor that. Sure, they can stay in there and pay. No problem with that at all. Okay. If it's not tenant occupied, great. Just get the property back and do what? Resell it as is, resell it with financing, fix it up and resell it, fix it up and sell it with financing, fix it up and rent it. I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless there. So another way of looking at this, everybody, is would you pay $16,500 for a property worth 65 as is? And I hope the answers are resounding. Well, yes, of course. Okay. Would you also do that where you had virtually minimal at best competition, right? This wasn't a foreclosure auction where you had 50 people show up to bid on it. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't some silent bid where they're telling you, I don't know, you got to bid higher to the property's worth 65. No. Okay. This was a note purchase with a contract for deed, and then all you have to do is enforce that contract for deed. Okay. So property taxes, we looked all that up. That was delinquent. And of course, that can potentially be a problem, but that's a problem that can be easily cured. How do you cure a property tax problem? Pay it, right? So that's going to be an additional cost that he'll have to
Trick
pay.
question. Wasn't a trick question.
Yeah. So, you pay it. And then when do you pay it? You pay it before it can be enforced into a forced sale, right? So I think in this case, if memory serves correctly, Alvin just said, I don't want that lingering. I'm just going to pay it. So you take the 16.5 and you have an additional 1,700 bucks on top, right? And that will be all paid off. So
Hey,
again,
do me a favor. Talk a little bit about when we look at non-performing. I've had this question come up, and I'm sure people that we talk to are on this. But talk a little bit about if there are liens on the property, such as if the electric company or the gas company, being able to call them and how you can get some of those fees waived. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so when we look at the title, we look obviously for taxes, as I'm showing you a screenshot here, but there could be other liens, such as Dwayne was saying, utility liens, something like that. Utility liens are interesting because it depends on if the utility is owned by the city or the county. If the utility company is owned by the city or the county, like where I live, our utility is owned by the city. In other places, it's a public utility. So if it's a public utility, generally that lien stays with the person who opened the account, which would be the borrowers. But if it's owned by the city or a municipality or the county, then they're going to attach it to the property. Okay. So that's what we were looking at on those. If those are not paid, those are enforceable liens. And a lot of times, if you're taking legal action to get title to that property, they're going to say, you got to pay us first before we allow you to continue. So it is something that you would look at. But a lot of these municipalities, if you go to them and say, hey, look, I'm trying to be a cure to this. The property's been sitting there vacant for 2 years. It's hurting the neighborhood values, those sorts of things. There's possible, criminals that can look for vacant homes, all these sorts of things, and going, hey, I'm taking this over. We're going to fix it up. We're going to solve this problem. A lot of times the municipalities will give you a discount, so if there's 4,000 or that's too much. If there's $1,200 or something owed on a utility bill, they may accept 600 of that. Not saying that they will, but it's something certainly that you would ask to see if they would be willing to do that. Property taxes, not so much. They're not going to discount that. They want to collect their money.
Individual bankruptcy.
What about it?
No, I'm saying to explain that. So somebody has a BK, how does that follow? Does it follow them? Just that, can they put a lien on the property? Talk about that.
That might deviate us a little bit here, but if a borrower declares bankruptcy, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
If the borrower declares bankruptcy, they do have certain rights that will be figured out by the bankruptcy courts as to what can be paid, what debt goes with them, what debt can be forgiven. So there is a possibility that any debt on their side, not on the property, could be forgiven, or could be wiped away. But in a case like this, where the borrower, remember, is not on the title to the property, there's nothing that debt that they have that can be put on the property. In other words, if the borrower got hurt and they had to go to the hospital and they couldn't pay the hospital bill, a hospital can put a lien on someone's personal property. Okay, they can put a lien on their real property. In a case like this, the borrower's not on the title to the property, so the hospital can't put a lien on there. A credit card company, sells the uncollected debt to a debt collector. The debt collector files a lien on the property. They can't do it in this case because the borrower is not on the title to the property. So it's impervious to that personal debt from the borrower, because after all, they have a contract to get the deed. They do not have the deed yet, which means they don't have the ownership.
Appreciate it.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's good.
So we learned on this whole thing, we learned the entire history of the property. We looked up, saw when the owner got this. We looked up the payment history, saw when he got in trouble, when he stopped making payments. We even got to see some notes from servicing companies about when they contacted this borrower. So we got a really good flavor of who this borrower was. So we had a feeling that he may come back and try to save this, which is fine, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we made our offer. I should say Alvin made his offer, 16.5, and we consulted with an attorney on this as well, because of certain verbiage in the contract for deed. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing anything on there, that it was enforceable, and that we had a good chance that this contract for deed, the way it was written, would avoid the foreclosure process. And that was smart. That only cost a couple $100 to do, and we felt pretty comfortable about that process. And that $200 ended up being retainer with the attorney, and we hired that, or I should say, Alvin hired that attorney to just work through the legal process to dissolve that contract for deed, which again was not a foreclosure. Well, sure enough, the borrower did come out of the woodworks here, but you can see this documents the quitclaim deed. So when Alvin purchased this, it went from the current note owner over to Alvin's company. So he's on the deed of the property. You can see it's recorded and everything. So he got the deed immediately to the property, and that's a big deal. So now all we have to do is dissolve this contract for deed relationship. And that was pretty easy. And the story, that goes behind that is the guy did try to fight it. He said, hey, if you'll work with me, I'll catch up and that sort of thing. And, the response was, okay, if you want to catch up on this and you want to keep the property, sure. You've got to come up with, $37,000. And if you come up with $37,000, if you can go to the bank or what have you, you have every right to do that. And, great, but we're not going to give you, all the time in the world to do this. We're not going to save, we're not going to stop any legal action we're taking. But if you want to pay us off the $37,000, you have every single right to do that. In the meantime, we're pushing down the road. Okay. Otherwise, people would, oh, I don't have it yet. Give me another month. All that stuff comes into play. But
Dog ate the
certainly,
homework.
yeah. So if you paid 16.5 and then 30 days later they're going to pay you 37 grand, you'd absolutely take that. I mean, that's a home run, So sure, you have the right to do that, but in the meantime, here's the documentation, that we are proceeding legally on this transaction to get the property. And that's really where it was. The guy lawyered up, and the lawyer, tried to file some things. Our lawyer pushed it right back and said, hey, you come up with 37,140, you got 30 days to do it. No problemo. Otherwise, we're still on track for this. And they didn't come up with the money. And they filed another petition to delay. They ended up delaying it for another month. But then finally, the judge is like, you're done. You're not showing the ability. Look, you haven't paid in 2 years, and now you're holding this up. You've already been given 30 days, because the judge liked the fact that we gave this guy, hey, we'll give you 30 days, come up with the money. If the house is worth 65 and you've got decent credit, you should be able to come up with $37,000. Okay. But he didn't. So, it just went through its legal process, and like I said, he's already got the title. So we got the title to the property um, before the agreement was dissolved, right? So that happened right away. All we had to do was dissolve the agreement. That took place. There is a legal process. If you're doing these instruments, very important that you have an attorney, because like in Michigan, where they have a state law, the state law is very specific on what you need to do, what letters need to be sent, what timeframes need to be followed, what you can and cannot say. Very important, because if you break that, if you don't do it the right way, then the opposing attorney working with the borrower is going to say, see what they did there? They didn't follow the procedure. And a judge might agree and say, yeah, you know what? We're going to make you foreclose. You don't want that to happen, right? So you need to be very specific and work with attorneys who are specialists. Okay, don't work with a general practitioner. It's just like when I do mentorship. I do the mentoring. It's me, the expert, working directly with you. I'm not outsourcing to that to somebody with a year's worth of experience. That's not what you want. You want to work with an expert. When it comes to attorneys who get involved in loss mitigation, bankruptcy issues, all of these things, these are specialties. Think of it as a physician. If you just have a little cough, maybe go to a general practitioner. If a general practitioner, says, hey, you've got some problems, I think, in the lungs, what are they going to do? They're going to refer you to a specialist. Go to somebody who specializes in that. That's what we need to do in these cases here. So the other day, yesterday, as you can see, at 12:21 p.m., I just copied this morning from my computer, took a screenshot. Alvin, you can see, just got the wire. Forgot to take his. I'll fix that. Alvin got his money because he sold the property. So he hooked up with a local REO REO real estate agent in the area. And that agent helped him out because there was things that needed to be cleaned up at the property and removed. So he had a dumpster go out there, remove the property. There was some debris and stuff in the house. Let's get rid of that. Let's make it showable enough for an investor to come in who might be looking to buy it. We looked at, because now we got the interior. We looked at the interior, and then Alvin had to make a decision. Do I want to fix this myself and raise the value and possibly make more money, or should I just take a cash offer now and be out of the deal? And ultimately, he was ready to move on. He was ready to move on. And this REO agent that had been helping him really almost for free to line up a dumpster and who's a good guy to remove the trash, this REO agent knew all those people. So he built this relationship with this REO agent, which is important. And that agent then ultimately got paid a commission to sell the property. And the property sold pretty quickly because the agent reached out to his database of other investors and got it done. And that's what's the name of the game, and so he got a good offer, and profit margins and everything were very good on it. His overall yield is going to be extremely impressive. I haven't seen the final numbers on that just yet, but that's a whole deal from start to finish on a non-performer, where the goal was acquire the property, and then he applied the exit strategy, had options, but the exit strategy he ultimately chose was, I'm just going to sell it as is to an investor, cash offer. And it was a cash sale. So it wasn't contingent upon financing or anything like that. It wasn't a consumer that was buying it. It's a rehabber that's buying it. Pretty
That's
good,
all.
right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And we talk about, just because you're in wholesale buying or you're a real estate agent doesn't mean you have to quit doing that. The note space is just a bolt on to that, because I think his background, he was a real estate investor at one time.
No, he actually wasn't.
I
I
thought he
remember that
was.
because I remember. Well, I don't believe so, because I remember having a conversation. He goes, "Well, I haven't closed on a house like this before, so I don't think I'm
Oh,
in the
for
rehab
some reason I
space."
thought he was. It was probably connections that he had in the past,
Yeah.
probably.
It
But
could
he
be,
was
and
having a hard
I might be
time.
wrong, but either way, you can do this with or without, that
Yeah, sure, sure,
that
sure.
experience. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But yeah, I was pretty excited,
Good
So
deal.
again, current deal. I mean, it just wrapped up yesterday, and he was smart. I talked to him the day before too on another one of his notes. Um, And he goes, yeah, he goes, supposedly it's closing tomorrow. He goes, I'm not counting the money yet until it's done. I'm like, good man.
Yeah.
Good man, because you never know, it's not done until it's done. But wire received, document signed, over.
I mean, that's really good. I was bragging on you a little bit to a buddy of mine the other day, saying that you're seems like the only thing I hear from you lately is, hey, another deal's closed, another deal's closed, and your students are doing really well. And I think that has, the accolades go to you for your time spending with these guys and gals. Just really getting them over the hump. And you and I have said it all along, all these years. People want to be able to, we've talked about group setting, and everybody else has their situation. What's working for me? What do I need? And I think, with the training that you provide one-on-one like that, it stands definitely apart from the rest that are out there, and working directly with you. And I think that has a lot to say for your success with these students, is because they can work directly on their deal, whether it's something they're finding from uh, relationships you've created with other hedge fund companies, assets, or deals that they have themselves are able to bring to the table. And you can just pick, as we say, peel away the onion and look at the core of the deal. And so, hats off to you. You have some great success stories recently, and rolling with it.
Yeah, I did a whole outline on last Wednesday. I think we have 10 people getting ready to in some process of closing transactions, and some new, some that have
And
been
these are
with me a
new
while.
people that are coming in with,
Yeah, Anna's closing on two deals. She's
and she just
been with me
signed up
maybe a
when
month and a
a
half.
month ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a number of them, and you know, it's just it's a scientific, approach to this. I mean, when you think about it, mentorship throughout history, how do you learn effectively? Well, you learn from people who've got more experience, so you don't have to, it's trial and error, or it's working with somebody that can avoid, have you avoid all that trial and error by learning what they do. So my approach to the industry is really just based upon that. But it's so effective, and I don't care if it's in sports or trade or anything like that. How do you learn? How do you become a good carpenter? You work, as an apprentice for other
Yeah.
other carpenters, who are masters in that. If you're an athlete, how do you learn? Part of it's God-given talent, but that's got to be directed. It's got to be refined. So it's just the right way to do it. Any kind of skill set, I think, can be done, and that's why people with no experience can do this. That's why people with experience can do this. And again, sometimes the people with experience, I have to rewire the way they think on certain things, because they've been trained so much in what they do, they just get tunnel vision, and they can't. I got to go. Whoop, you got to open up here a little bit. You're not looking at things the right way. But there's Dwayne's Calendly link, we're putting up there for you. So if you want to talk with us about a topic for Water Cooler Wednesday, great. You want to talk to us about what we can do to help you get the same kind of results of all these case studies that you see us put together every week. Again, there's no shortage of them, and what happens with me is I've got to try to capture all these closings. So I'm kind of running into a situation where I can't make enough PowerPoints to cover all the deals that are being done. But I always want to bring ones that bring a nice little story to it, something that you all can follow and keep entertained there for you. So that's what we got for today, and I hope you all enjoyed that. Again, if you want to watch a replay, it'll be on YouTube, full video. If you want to just listen to it again, you can jump on my podcast, Real Estate Without Renters, and listen to the audio replay there as well.
We want to talk about schedule wise, so we will not be on air for the next 2 weeks. We won't start back until the 8th, correct?
Wow, yeah, because the next Wednesdays are New Year's Day and Christmas Day. Wow.
Yeah, it's Christmas Day
Good
next
catch.
Wednesday, and then New Year's Day the week after. So
Yeah,
we
you're
will
right.
not be back live until January the 8th.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Well, I may put together a little blurb or something like that. Who knows? I might just pop
Yeah,
on
yeah.
for a minute and say
Sounds
hello,
good.
but
Yeah.
but I don't know. We'll see. I need to. Well, actually,
You will be actually
I'm flying. Yeah.
you'll be in Reno. You'll be flying
Yeah.
up to Reno.
Yeah. Yeah. So I won't be making that. You're right. All right. Very good. And thanks for pointing that out, Dwayne, as well. I hadn't even looked that far ahead. So thanks everybody for being on. Glad you enjoyed it and appreciate you clicking through.